All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's video looking at another draft strategy video for picks 5 to 8. This one will be a little bit different than obviously the last one that we just did from picks 1 to 4. If you still have any questions about that, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe before we get into the mock draft and even the draft strategy here. But looking at this one, it's a little bit different, mainly because you have an opportunity of taking a goalie a little bit earlier. You have the ability to kind of take a goalie in the first or second round, one of those top two premier goalies in Igor Shesterkin or Ilya Sorokin, just where you're going to be kind of picking. It'll be easier to get that goalie in the 7 to 8 range, I will say. So that spot, you can take either Igor, Sorokin. If you want to take like Audie in that second round, that's fine as well. Not as high on him as I am these other guys, but I think that's still a good pick. And then you can grab your second goalie in the 5th or 6th round and really have like some strong goalies, and then pick up your third one a little bit earlier in the 7th or 8th. In the last two mock drafts I've done, I've picked up Cam Talbot or a guy like that in one of the last rounds as my third goalie. But if you really want to shore up your goaltending and have someone available to trade, then you can even get a goalie before that, before maybe the 10th or 9th round. And looking at the forwards here, your first pick is most likely going to be a winger, because those top 4 centers are going to be gone in Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Nathan MacKinnon. And then depending on if someone's reaching on Austin Matthews, he will be gone. No problem taking Austin Matthews at that between that 5 to 8 spot 100%. He's going at the end of the first round right now, which I think is definitely great value if you're getting him there. But more likely than not, I've seen Matthews been going in those first 4 picks recently, because I think people are starting to catch on. Like, he's scored over 40 goals in 5 of his 7 seasons that he's played in the NHL. Like, that's absolutely incredible. And last year, everyone said it was like more of a down year. He led the NHL in expected goals for and 5-on-5 play. So definitely a guy that you can rely on for at least 40 to 45 goals, which is huge in fantasy hockey. But if you're looking at the wingers to draft, Matt Tkachuk will fall nicely to you in that 5 or 6 range, a guy who has left wing and right wing capabilities. And then also, I wouldn't mind taking Brady Tkachuk, especially in bangers leagues as well. Like, this is a guy who led the NHL in expected goals for in all strengths, and then also was 4th in shots on goal with like 350, and still finished with 200 plus hits as well. So the guy does it all. I think this year too, we'll see him get 40 plus goals, just on that really strong Ottawa team. But if you do need like just pure goal scorers and you're looking to draft that, then you have the option of taking Kucherov or Mikko Rantanen as well. And then talking about defensemen here, this one might be a little bit tougher getting like a really strong D-core. I would suggest taking your defenseman in that 3rd and 4th round if you can, depending on where defensemen are going. Look, if Adam Fox, Makar, Yossi, Dahlin are all gone in the 3rd or 4th round, I would kind of wait maybe take Miro Heiskanen or something like that in the 4th round, and then look at guys like Evan Bouchard, John Carlson, Brent Burns a little bit later on, because you still will need to shore up your offensive unit as well. So looking at defensemen, kind of, it'll be a better option to kind of wait and see kind of policy there, especially if guys are going early. However, I don't have any problem if you have the ability to take like Yossi, Dahlin in the 3rd and 4th round, because then after that you can go hard on wingers and centers as well. From this draft spot, I would not look at taking a center before maybe the 5th or 6th round, unless you get Austin Matthews or someone like that, if someone falls to you in that position from 5 to 8. So that's the strategy there. I'm going to be drafting from the 7th hole this time to show you guys a little bit of separation from that 4th spot that I drafted in the last video. So let's see how it goes. All right, so here we go. Drafting from the 7th spot in this mock draft today. We'll probably kind of cancel the last few rounds, considering I think you see a lot of the regular players that have been taking in those last few rounds in terms of sleepers and which players you're kind of shoring up the rest of your team. This team, will be a little bit different on who I'm going to be picking a little bit later on, but we'll still go until the 9th or 10th round to kind of show you. So who I'm eyeing on right now, you can see him, he's kind of in my queue, is Brady Tkachuk at that 7th spot. I kind of mentioned the draft strategy. I think he's a great pick at this spot right here. Obviously, you're going to see McDavid and Draisaitl be those top 2 picks right there. But Tkachuk is a premier option for me this year, considering all of his stats and analytics last season. This Ottawa team is going to be good. They're going to be scoring a lot of goals. This power play is going to be really good as well. He plays in like every single situation. He's super physical, so a guy I'll be looking at for sure. And like I mentioned before too, if Austin Matthews kind of sticks around to that spot, I would not be opposed to taking him either. For this sake of this video, I want to take a winger first to kind of show you guys how you can build your team around your wingers, defenseman, goalie first, and then take centers a little bit later on. Like, I think the first center I'll probably be looking at taking will be Dylan Larkin or Nico Hischier in the 5th or 6th round. Those guys are generally available at that spot. So interesting to see how the rest of this first round goes. Jason Robertson going that early is shocking. That's shocking, to be honest. So only one more pick before I go. There's a lot of great players left on this board. Obviously, there goes Austin Matthews. So Pasternak, I think, will have a little bit more of a down year. Can't see him scoring having 60 goals this year, maybe 50. Kucherov, this Tampa Bay team, interesting situation. Rantanen, I think we'll see McKinnon maybe take some of his goals this year because Rantanen obviously had a 100-point season, 50-goal season. I'm going to go with Brady Tkachuk. I have faith in Brady Tkachuk, a guy that can also be taking in that 9 to 12 slot as well in 12-man leagues. So that's an interesting option there too. But here's my pick coming up. So as I mentioned before as well, Ilya Sorokin right there, Igor Shesterkin right there, two guys that hopefully will be available when I pick, and they are. So perfect. So a little bit of auto draft there, so a little bit lucky, but I'm getting my top goaltender, which is Ilya Sorokin, a guy I think this is the year he's going to win the Vezina. Yet to win a Vezina, but is still over the last 2 seasons been one of the best goalies in the NHL when it comes to goals against average, saves, save percentage, and even wins too with this Islanders team because he plays so much. So there we go. We got a forward and our top goalie, the best goalie probably in the NHL right now. And now I'm going to be looking at getting either another winger at that spot where it falls, and definitely a defenseman. So defenseman right now, who has gone, just Cale Makar at this point. But Adam Fox, Karlsson, Dahlin, Josi. If I had to rank those 3, it'd probably be Fox, Josi, and then Dahlin, and then Karlsson. I'm not super high on Karlsson. Like, he's not going to score 100 points again this year. On this Pittsburgh team, he was the only guy in that San Jose Sharks power play that was getting points, especially after Meyer left. Like, Couture definitely got some residuals off that, and they kind of fed off each other. But on this Pittsburgh team, you have Crosby, Malkin, even Letang on the point as well, a guy who kind of matches Karlsson's offensive prowess, I would say. Not 1-for-1, but it's definitely up there in terms of their skating ability. But I'm definitely going to be looking at a defenseman here. You're seeing another goalie, Ottinger, has just gone too. And there goes Adam Fox. So I'd still take Josi at this spot if I can get him. Will he be available? I don't know. Nylander going there. They're not that shocking as well. If you saw the mock draft, the last one we did from 1 to 4, Nylander's available there as your 2nd or 3rd round pick too. So that's an interesting option. Tavares going pretty early. A lot of centers going relatively early here. So I like kind of where this is lining up. I did a mock draft just before I did this one too, and defensemen were going way earlier. Like, I think by I got time to this pick, Josi, Fox, Makar, Dahlin, all those guys were gone. Or it might have been in the 4th round too, and then Heiskanen as well. He was already gone too. So I might try to go with double D here. I might go Josi and then Heiskanen if I can get him. So there goes Timo Meier too. A lot of the good wingers too are kind of gone at this point too. So it's kind of leaving me no choice but to look at the defenseman angle. And that's the best way to do it as well. You got to look for the best player available, and that's usually the good option. So there goes Stamkos. I'm going to go with Roman Josi here. And if I can get Dahlin, that would be even better. I doubt he will be around, but I have no problem taking Miro Heiskanen in this 4th round. People might think it's a little bit of a reach, but I don't think so. And then it's going to be wingers and forwards for the next 2 rounds after that one. Crazy that Connor Bedard is going this high in drafts. I know he's obviously an unbelievable prospect, but the thought of him getting, Panarin 80-point scorer last year. Let's look at some of the guys that are around him. I mean, Karlsson obviously still there. Brad Marchand, a guy who had a little bit of a down year last year, but still 70 points. Aho as well. I think he'll be always in that consistent 70, 80 points mark. So here we go. Dahlin's there. So I'm going to take Dahlin. That's perfect. Brady Tkachuk, Roman Josi, Rasmus Dahlin, Ilya Sorokin. Very happy with that so far. Very balanced too in terms of skill, points, goals, hits, blocks, and then obviously you have a very solid goaltender there. So now I'm going to be looking at some wingers and a center. So like I said, round 5, I'm going to be looking at Nico Hischier and Dylan Larkin. Both guys, like Dylan Larkin last year, 32 goals, 47 assists. I think we'll still see him in the 30-goal range for sure, but I think we'll see his assists just skyrocket. Playing alongside Lucas Raymond, which he did last year, but they never really had a true goal scorer like a guy like Alex DeBrincat, a guy who's been able to score 40-plus goals in 2 of his seasons, or 3 of his seasons, I believe, with Chicago. Last year, a little bit of a down year, but I knew he wasn't totally happy with his situation in Ottawa as well. I think in Detroit, he will be the trigger man on that power play. He'll be the trigger man on pretty much any type of scoring chance or when they're trying to score. because his shot, it's an absolute laser beam, and he's been able to put up 40-plus goals. It was Larkin and Perron were the two guys that were scoring goals for Detroit last year. So this year, I think Larkin is a really good option. At this point, you're seeing a lot of defensemen go now. That's the problem. Like, if you do have someone like me who's taking all these defensemen a lot earlier at that 7th spot in the 3rd and 4th round, you might be handcuffed with some not as good ones a little bit later on. Like in the 5th round here, Charlie McAvoy, Miro Heiskanen, still very good options, I would say. Still very, very good options, but I'm glad that I kind of already got my defense figured out here. Saros is also another option. Like, if you really want to stack your goalies, Saros could be an option in this 5th round here. I'd be pretty surprised if he sticks around at this point. Yeah, there's Saros and Swayman. Like, I'd rather have Saros. Unless you're in a league that doesn't have saves at all. Saros was first in Yahoo Fantasy scoring last year in terms of goalies because of the save volume that he has, because of how much he plays and how many starts he gets. Toffoli is a really interesting option. Obviously, he just went off the board. Did Larkin go? Yeah, Larkin went. So I'm going to get a little risky here, and I'm going to take Boldy because I love that the left wing and right wing capabilities here, and hopefully I can get Hischier on my 2nd pick here in the 6th round. Yeah, but back to Toffoli. Like, Toffoli last year, career high in points, career high in goals, was 73 points, and I think 35 goals. And his shot volume was also a lot higher than we've seen in years past. I just don't think he's going to have the same opportunity here in New Jersey when you have Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Timo Meier, Alexander Holtz, too, is going to be playing probably on that top 6 as well. I just don't see the same, and Jesper Bratt too. How can you forget about him? So I'm not as high on Tyler Toffoli as a lot of other people are. I think he'll have a solid season, but I can't see him getting more than 80 points. Like, there's no chance. And right now in that range, he's kind of that's where he's sticking around. Okay, so there goes DeBrincat, also another good option. Someone that I would have taken as well with Boldy. Nico Hischier's still there, but Saros is still there too. Like, if I can get Sorokin and Saros, that is a very dangerous goalie tandem, and I won't have to really worry too much about goalies after that. Okay, I feel like Saros is going to go here in the auto draft. Oh, wow, he did not. He did not at all. So now I have a decision to make. Do I want to just stack my goalies here with Saros or take my first center and get Nico Hischier? The one thing I've always said, and it's well known in fantasy hockey, there's always going to be centers available. So I'm going to go with Saros here, just stack the goalie and defenseman position. I think they're really solid. Like, taking Sorokin and Saros is really good options here. And then centers, like, if you look a little bit further down, like, Kempe has center capabilities. You know, Jordan Kyrou is a guy I would look at. Pierre-Luc PLD is a pretty good option too. Natchez. A lot of really good options here that I think people might be sleeping on in terms of centers because there's just so many of them. Yeah, and look, it's so funny. You look at the X rank on Yahoo, you have Bo Horvat here, 61st, but his ADP is 112. I would stay away from Bo Horvat. This Islanders team, they don't score goals. And they didn't do anything in the offseason to really change that. Obviously, they got Horvat and signed him to a big deal. But this offseason, nothing really changed. And I don't see why it would change under Lane Lambert. He's very similar style to what Barry Trotz was doing. So I don't see the reason why you would take Bo Horvat this early. If you look at his production between Vancouver and New York last year, I think with the Islanders, like, he had like 3 goals or 4 goals after he got traded, which is nuts. And before that, I think he already had 30 goals by the time he got traded to the Islanders last year from Vancouver. He was having a fantastic season. So Hischier is still there, which is crazy, but I feel like he's going to go here. Like, you got to remember too, with those first couple of picks, right? A lot of people are taking centers early, so they're not really looking at centers a little bit later on. So if Hischier falls to me here, yeah, and he did. That's crazy. This team is awesome. So Hischier in the 7th round. Now in the 8th round, I can look at, let's check in on defensemen, see kind of who's left here. Yeah, so a lot of defensemen have gone. If you're looking at someone like Noah Dobson, I really like Noah Dobson this year. He's still further down the ADP. There's a lot of guys ahead of him. If you're playing with guys who are just looking at stats or ADP, they're not really going to be focusing on maybe just the absolute pure skill of a player, let's say. Here goes Gustafsson. A lot of guys just went. Sergachev's there. Not a huge fan of him right now. I'm going to go with Sam Reinhart, actually. I think he's a great option, has center and right wing capabilities there, too. One of those guys who finished top 10 in expected goals for as well. Really underrated, had a really good tail end of his season, too. So I really like that pick right there. Still see so many good centers here, too. So the one thing I looked at, Joel Eriksson Ek's a really interesting option for me. I really like him this year. He's one of those guys who is also relatively high in expected goals for, was a focal point on that Minnesota power play as well, and I think it can only get better this year too, and a guy who's going to get you a lot of shots and a lot of hits as well. he's been very solid for this Minnesota team. A guy that plays in all facets of the game too. He'll be on the power play, plays on the penalty kill as well, has that defensive nature of him, but also has that ability to score goals and set guys up. So I do like Eriksson Ek at this point too. But right now, looking at the team, you kind of have two of everything, 2D. I'd look at maybe going for a defenseman at this point. Maybe Noah Dobson with this next pick. I would really like that. But yeah, you can kind of see what I did like compared to that last mock draft. I have two really premier goalies, Yossi and Dahlin, who are probably two top 4 defensemen in fantasy hockey going into this season. And my forwards, the two, are very solid as well. Obviously, I probably have a little bit more value in my goalies and defensemen drafting from the 7 spot, but that's kind of how you have to do it, and I think that's a smart way to do it too. Because then you could take defensemen a little bit later. You don't have to worry about it as much, I would say. You have Drake Batherson that's still around too. He's kind of just kicking it there. I have no right wingers right now. Right wingers too in Yahoo leagues. There's not a ton of guys that are listed as right wingers, which is really weird, but it's just kind of how the cards fall a lot of these times. So I doubt this guy's going to take Noah Dobson. I'm going to go with Noah Dobson here. I think that's the best option at this point. Chris Letang. Definitely going with Noah Dobson. Is definitely on that first power play. He's been around 50 points the last 2 seasons. I think we'll see his shot totals go up. For some reason last year, he didn't lead the team in time on ice. Maybe Lane Lambert was trying to get kind of just a better lay of the land. We saw guys like Pellick finish with more ice time, and with Barry Trotz's last season, Dobson led the entire team in time on ice. So I think that's important to note. I feel like you'll definitely have a little bit more of a leash this year with Lane Lambert as the head coach now after a full season. This guy. I have yet to take this guy in a mock draft, and I think I'm going to take him here. Jonathan Huberdeau, a guy I think can get back up to that point per game prowess as he did in years past. 115 points with Florida, and then last year just 55 and only 15 goals too. But playing under Daryl Sutter, it's not always easy. He doesn't mesh with every single player. One of the biggest things with Jonathan Huberdeau, I realized when I was doing my research, Huberdeau, when he was in Florida, started 80% of his shifts in the offensive zone. In Calgary last year, he started 60%. So obviously Sutter was using him in a very different way. I'm going to take him here. I know I have a lot of left wings already, but that's okay. I can move Reinhart to a right winger and Boldy as a right winger too. So I really like how this team's kind of shaping up here. There's so many goalies available too. I feel like on this draft, not maybe the smartest drafters, if I had to guess, considering how the draft went yesterday compared to today. I felt like a lot of people were taking a lot of the picks I was looking at. But yeah, we're getting to the 11th round here. Probably going to stop relatively soon. As you can kind of see, I've done in mock drafts before. If you have yet to watch those videos, watch the first full mock draft that I did 2 videos ago, and then I just did the last one where I picked from 1 to 4. I believe I picked from the 4 slot. So a little bit of a different angle here for sure than I did in that last one. I think what I'm going to do here for this pick is go with Stuart Skinner if he's available, because if you're looking for wins, this Oilers team is going to have a shit ton of wins because they play in a pretty shitty conference overall. It's not as deep, I would say, as the Eastern Conference, and the Pacific is not as good as, I would say, it's one of the weaker divisions along with the Central. So we saw Skinner, last season he finished with 29 wins and he didn't even play like the whole season. I think this year he is the solidified number 1. They've made that pretty clear. Jack Campbell's making $5 million a year just sitting on the bench, which is shitty obviously for that Edmonton team, but maybe he gets shipped off at some point this year because I don't think they're going to use him. Connor Brown just went early. That's an interesting. Oh, and Stuart Skinner just went. Motherfucker, that sucks. Okay, too bad. So I won't reach on a goalie because I think Demko's a good option as your third goalie this year. I just want to see what else we have here. Like, do I just go with Tony DeAngelo and just fully shore up the defenseman position, or do I I'm gonna go with Demko. Not gonna balk on my strategy there. I think having Demko as your third goalie is a great option because he's a guy you're taking a little bit of a risk on, obviously, right? Like a guy that last year obviously didn't have the great season, but we saw Vancouver's defensive unit under Bruce Boudreau get much improved after he left and Rick Tocchet came in. They picked up some guys that I think will really help, and Carson Soucy, and we get Filip Hronek for a full season as well. So defense are starting to go relatively well. I'm going to go with Joel Eriksson Ek here. I talked about him before. I think he's a great pick in this 12th round. I know it shows I have no right wingers, but I do. I should probably get another right winger in this next one then, and then probably defenseman, and then that'll be it for this video. Nichushkin too, obviously an interesting option, but obviously with the things that happened in the playoffs last year, I was surprised to see him in camp, but it seems like he'll be on that second line alongside Ryan Johansson and probably on that first power play where we saw him kind of light it up when the Avs did win the Cup 2 years ago. He's a really interesting option, just with an absolute cannon of a shot, a guy who can get you goals, a lot of goals later on in these rounds too. So he's an interesting option. And then Condre Miller too at D, probably someone I'll be looking at. I love Condre Miller this year. I love the Rangers defensemen in general. I feel like they're being slept on, and I don't think a lot of people kind of see how valuable Peter Laviolette is to a defenseman's stats on their respective teams. So I think he's a really good pick here later on in this 13th round. Raquel too. Like, Gensel's out for the first month or two. He'll probably go back on the power play, but if you want Raquel for that first month, he's going to be playing in a lot of different situations. You know, Riley Smith, another good option. He's one of my sleeper picks that I had in one of my videos too. Both of those guys, if they're playing alongside Sidney Crosby, their potential is kind of endless. Like, you don't really know, because Crosby's made so many decent players look way better than they actually are. Luke Schenn, if you're in hits leagues, like, look for Luke Schenn. Led the NHL in hits last year. Obviously a good option there. Radko Gudas just went, so there you go. Another guy who's just going to get in bangers leagues is so valuable. I'm going to take Nichushkin here. I think that's a pretty solid pick. And then I'm going to go with Condre Miller, hopefully, if he's still around. I think he will be. We'll see. Defense are still flying off the shelves. And then after that, it's really up to you. Like, who do you need to fill the rest of your team with? And you can go with some guys that are sleepers. Like, I see Adam Fantilli and Matthew Nyes down here. If you think those guys are going to have solid rookie seasons, why not take a look at them? Like, they're on Matthew Nyes' different situation, because obviously there's a solidified top 6 there, but maybe he finds his way into it. Columbus, Adam Fantilli will probably start in that top 6, playing alongside Kent Johnson and Kirill Marchenko. So I'm going to take Condre Miller there. There's other guys, Lucas Reichel's looked really good in the preseason. Jonathan Drouin is an option, because he's been playing on that first line with McKinnon and Rantanen, then probably on that second power play as well. So there's a lot of really good wingers, centers that you can take a lot later on. Obviously, in this strategy, went a little bit different, shoring up my goalies and defensemen very early, taking Ilya Sorokin and Jussi Saros, and then looking at my defensemen, Roman Josi, Rasmus Dahlin, and Noah Dobson. So Noah Dobson could be your second defenseman in a lot of aspects, but I went with maybe less known forwards to kind of make sure that my defensemen and goalies were really stacked. So let me know what you thought of drafting from the 7th spot here. Let me know what you thought of my strategy from picks 5 to 8. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.